everyone, welcome back to Evelyn and Peter. I'm Rachel and I have another free pattern for you guys today. But before I get started and show you what it is, I just want to remind you to go ahead and subscribe to my channel. This helps me bring you guys all the free patterns and tutorials. So thank you so much for doing that and all of the support. So I actually have a blanket pattern for you guys today, and I know that a lot of people can be intimidated by making blankets because it's such a huge time commitment, but this one actually I made really fast. It only took me about 3 nights working on it for a couple hours each. So it's actually a really fast pattern to do. So if you've always wanted to try out making a blanket, then this one would be perfect for you, especially if you're a beginner. It is very beginner friendly, and I'll walk you through how to do the entire thing in this video. I also have the free version available of this pattern. So if you like to follow along with the written pattern, then you can go to my blog, EvelynAndPeter.com, and all of the information that you need is on that blog post. So it lists the exact amount of yardage you need and the exact colors and types of yarn that I used and the hook size and the gauge for the pattern and all of that. So I'll link to that below, and I recommend following along with that if you are watching this video. It also lists out the exact row and row count for the pattern. So following along with that, if you're a beginner, it'll be a lot easier. So I definitely recommend doing that. But here is the design. So I named it the Fitzwilliam Throw after my dog, who is actually hanging out in the room with me right now. But this is the blanket, and it is a decent size. It's not anything too huge. It's more of like a lapghan size blanket. So it ended up being about 48 inches long and approximately between 38 and 39 inches wide this way. And I did have some leftover yarn. So if you are using the exact same kind of yarn as me, then you will have a little bit left over. And if you wanted to try and make it a little bit wider, then you could probably add, this is the dog that the pattern is named after. I thought it would be perfect because he's kind of got the same black and white coloring as the fur yarn that I used in it. But anyways, for the yarn that I used was Cover Story by Lion Brand. Okay, you gotta get down now. Goodbye. Oh my gosh, crazy boy. And it is a super bulky weight yarn, and it has 547 yards. So if you've never seen this in store, it is a huge cake of yarn. Like, you're supposed to be able to make an entire blanket out of it, which is what I did, but I also added in some fur yarn. I used the color iron if you wanted to use the exact same as me. And then for the fur yarn, I used Lion Brand's Gopher Faux Thick and Quick. So they have a Gopher Faux and then a Gopher Faux Thick and Quick, which is what I use. And then they also have the loop yarn. So just make sure you grab the correct one. It is the one that is jumbo. So this is a weight of 7 and it comes with 24 yards. I grabbed 5 skeins of it, and I ended up using just under 5. I used about 4.5. So you will need all 5 skeins if you are adding the fur yarn like I did in the blanket. And the color that I used was zebra. So it's got this nice black and white and almost has like a brownish tan speckling in some parts of it. I thought it was really pretty. So that's what I used for the stripe portion, and you'll just be adding 3 stripes on this side and then the center of the blanket, and then 3 more on this side. So just a quick rundown on how I did the blanket. We'll be working it from the bottom up, and you'll make 5 rows of half double crochet, and then a row of fur, and then 5 more of the blanket yarn, and then a row of fur, and then 5 more blanket, a row of fur, 10 of the blanket, and then you'll just repeat that whole thing here. So I definitely recommend following along with my written pattern, and just watching that with the row changes as you go. But I hope you guys like this blanket. If you have any questions, make sure you just leave them in the comments below, and let me know what else you guys want to see from me. But thanks so much for watching, and I hope you guys enjoy the pattern. So to get started, you're going to need 1 cake of Lion Brand Cover Story yarn. This is just a super bulky weight of 6 blanket yarn. I'm using the color Iron, and it also has 547 yards, which is quite a bit, and you won't need to use all of it. You'll have a tiny bit left over. And then you're also going to need Go for Faux Thick and Quick, which is also by Lion Brand. This is a jumbo weight yarn, and I'm using the color Zebra, and I use just under 5 skeins. And for your hook, you're going to need a size P16 11.5 millimeter crochet hook, and then you'll also need a yarn needle to weave in your fur ends. So to begin, just go ahead and make a slip knot. So wrap the yarn around your fingers and pull it through. And then just take your hook and insert it in and pull tight to secure. For row 1, you're going to make 52 foundation half double crochet. So start off by chaining 2. And then in the first chain you made, so the one furthest away from your hook, you're going to yarn over, insert your hook into the back bump of that first chain, and then yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through the first loop only on your hook, yarn over, pull through all 3 loops. And you can see it created a little V at the bottom, and that is where you'll be inserting your hook. So yarn over, insert your hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through the first loop, and then yarn over, pull through all 3. Again, if you rotate, you can see it's creating a little V on the bottom of the stitch, and that is where you'll be inserting your hook for the rest of this row. So yarn over, insert your hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through the first loop only, yarn over, pull through all 3. And each time you do this, you're creating 1 half double crochet stitch, and you're kind of just combining the beginning foundation chain and your first row. So if you prefer to make a long foundation chain, you can make 53 chains and then work 1 half double crochet in the second chain from the hook and all the way down for a total of 52 half double crochet. But I prefer doing it this way and think it goes a lot quicker. But either way, you need to end up with a total of 52 stitches. So continue working your foundation stitches until you have a total of 52 half double crochet. Okay, so now I've made a total of 52 foundation half double crochet, and I'm at the end of the row. So I'll show you how to start row 2. All we're going to do is chain 1 and then go ahead and turn your work. And now all we'll be doing for row 2 is just working 1 half double crochet into each stitch across. So yarn over, insert your hook into the very first stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, and then yarn over, pull through all 3. That's 1 half double crochet. And then again in the second stitch, and just do this all the way across the row. So 1 half double crochet in each stitch across. And when you get to the end of the row, your stitch count will stay the same at 52 half double crochet. And then you can go ahead and chain 1 and turn your work. So just repeat this exact same thing, and then do this for a total of 5 rows. So after you finish row 3, you can chain 1, turn, work row 4, chain 1, turn, and work row 5. So just work half double crochets all the way across for each row for a total of 5 rows. Okay, so now I've completed 5 rows of all half double crochet stitches, and now I'm going to show you how to bring in the fur yarn. So you can see that I am at my very last stitch of the row, and I have 3 loops on my hook still, and usually we would just pull through with the blanket yarn, but now we're switching to the fur yarn. So instead of pulling through with the blanket, just place the fur yarn on and pull it through to complete the stitch, and then chain 2 and turn your work. And this chain 2 is going to count as our first double crochet stitch of this row. You can chain 3 if you prefer, but I like to personally just do a chain 2 so that there isn't a gap in between my work, but either one works. So I've chained 2 and that's my first stitch. So we're not going to work a stitch into that same spot. We're going to start on the one right next to it. So work just a normal double crochet stitch. So yarn over, insert your hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through the final 2, and that is 1 double crochet stitch. And you're just going to do this all the way across the row. So 1 double crochet stitch into each of the half double crochets, and when you reach the end of the row, your stitch count will still be the same at 52 double crochet. And then I'll show you how to bring back in the blanket yarn and what we're going to do for the rest of the blanket. Okay, now I'm at the very end of the row. I'm at my last double crochet stitch, so I have 2 loops on my hook and I need to finish that stitch. So if you haven't already, go ahead and cut your blanket yarn from the other side because we're going to be working with that again. So go ahead and cut it and then just bring it in to your current stitch, and instead of finishing off with the fur yarn, we're going to place our blanket yarn over the hook. Make sure you're leaving a tail long enough to just tie in later. So just go ahead and pull through, and then you can kind of give the fur yarn and the blanket yarn a little tug, make sure it's nice and secure. And then go ahead and chain 1. The chain 1 does not count as a stitch. So just chain 1, and then you can also cut your fur yarn and then turn your work. And then we're going to go back to working half double crochet stitches and working 1 half double crochet stitch into the top of each double crochet stitch across. And you can see it's really hard to see your stitches. You won't be able to actually see them, but you can easily feel them. So where I was sticking my finger through, that was each double crochet stitch. So it's actually really easy to feel it as you're going, and that's what I recommend doing. So work 1 half double crochet stitch into each one. Just make sure you're feeling it with your fingers. You'll be able to feel a little hole at the top of each stitch, and this yarn is super forgiving. So if you accidentally put a stitch in the wrong place, it's really not going to matter too much as long as you are ending the row with 52 half double crochet. So just make sure when you get to the end of the row that your stitch count is still 52. And then when you get to the end, you can chain 1, turn your work, work another row of half double crochet, and be sure you're following along with the written pattern. It has it listed out how many rows you need to do, because this is how you're going to continue with the blanket throughout, just repeating the blanket section and the fur section. Okay, now I'm at the very end of row 46, the very end of our blanket, and I wanted to go over really quick with you guys what you guys should have done. So we started off with 5 rows of half double crochet, 1 fur row of double crochet, 5 rows of half double crochet, 1 row of fur double crochet, 5 rows of half double crochet, 1 row of fur double crochet, and then 10 rows of half double crochet. And then we repeated that with doing the 3 rows of fur and the sections of 5 half double crochet. And we finished off with the section of 5 half double crochet. Now we're going to do the trim. And if that was confusing, just make sure you are following along with the free written pattern. It has all of the rows written out and what you should have. So now for the trim, you're going to do 2 more half double crochet into the very last stitch that you worked the last stitch of your last row. So we have 3 half double crochet in that same stitch right there at the very corner. And this just helps us rotate our work because now we're going to be working down the side of the blanket. And then you can see the tails of our fur and our blanket yarn. I like to just give it a knot so that is nice and secure. So if you wash your blanket or just from normal use so that the tails don't come undone, I just went ahead and double knotted mine. And then I crocheted right over the blanket yarn so that I didn't have to weave in any ends. But the fur yarn, I found that it popped out a little bit and didn't look very neat. So those I'm going to weave in later right directly into the fur section. So I recommend doing the same. But for this side of the blanket, just continue working your half double crochet stitches. So you're going to be working them into the sides of the actual rows. So there's not an actual stitch to be working in. You just have to play around with it a little bit and see where you think it looks good. Just try and make them even. I did between 1 and 2 half double crochet per row. I found that doing too many can make it pucker, but if you don't do enough, it'll tighten it too much. So just spread them evenly across. And if you get a little gap, you can just pull it out and move back some to close that gap and make it just look nice and neat. When you reach the fur section, just continue working your half double crochet stitches into the sides of the fur. You can go ahead and take the tail of the fur and just tuck it out of the way. I'm not going to crochet over mine because I'm just going to weave mine in later. But the tail of the blanket yarn, I am going to crochet over. So just continue working your half double crochet stitches as normal. And when you reach the next corner, go ahead and work 3 half double crochet into that same corner. So in the very same space, work 3 stitches, and then you can continue by working 1 half double crochet along the bottom of the blanket. So 1 half double crochet in each stitch across the bottom of the blanket. And then when you get to the next corner, go ahead and do the same thing by working 3 half double crochet all into the same space at that corner. And then you'll be on the next side of the blanket. So you're going to do the same thing as you're doing here and just work half double crochet stitches evenly up the side. And don't forget to crochet over the blanket yarn. And then when you get to the final corner, you can work 3 more into it. And then along the top of the blanket, just work 1 half double crochet in each stitch across. And then I'll show you guys how to finish off the blanket after you complete the trim. Okay, so now I've worked all 4 sides of my blanket and I'm back at the very beginning where I started the trim. And you can see I'm just going to insert my hook, yarn over, and pull through that very last stitch, and then cut my yarn, and then just pull the tail all the way through. And that completes our blanket. Now we just have to weave in the ends. So you'll need a yarn needle for this part, and you can just go ahead and thread your blanket yarn through your yarn needle and then weave it in. I like to do it a few times for blankets just because all the wear and tear, and I have 3 kids that love using them, so I don't want my tails to pop out. So I'll show you how to do it here. And once you've weaved it in, you can just go ahead and cut your yarn. And then we'll have to do the same thing with the fur yarn that we have left over. So you don't want to just cut it because the knots that you did could come undone. We want to leave that tail. And so just take your yarn needle and thread it through. It might be a little bit difficult because this yarn is so bulky, but just thread it through your yarn needle and then take the tail of that fur yarn and just weave it through the fur stripe that you have. So I just threaded all of mine and I weaved it through the center of the double crochet row. And then I just pulled it all the way through and tucked it in. If it popped out a little bit, I just trimmed it up a little bit with my scissors. So just go ahead and do that with all of the extra fur yarn. You can see that the fur is hidden completely and it blends in nicely. And then if you have any little tails popping out from the blanket yarn where you crocheted over, you can just go ahead and trim those up. And that is it. That completes the blanket. I hope you guys enjoyed this pattern, and make sure you leave a comment below letting me know any questions or if you have anything else you want to see from me. And thank you guys so much for subscribing, and thanks so much for watching.